All right, I'm back. So let's see. What I wanted to continue with here is, I guess, the subconscious. You know, we hear about this a lot these days. That there's a subconscious and it's programmed and it like creates a reality or something like that. Yes, it's kind of true, but I just want to tap on something. So there's this kind of existential conversation, right? It doesn't really come up much these days. I find culturally we don't really talk about the fundamental flavor of how we perceive reality. The thing is that we're all philosophers in a sense, and I know how cheesy that sounds, but our subconscious has an impression that of what the world is. We're all being led. We live our lives based off of certain guidelines, based off of what our subconscious considers to be existential truth. So, if you don't ever, well, if you're first of all either raised without values or with bad values, or you had some kind of massive traumas that affected the way that you sort of formed your impressions of reality, usually between birth and the age of 7 or so, or your parents said one thing and acted a different way. We pick up on this stuff. Kids are far more perceptive than we give them credit for. And God, parents suck these days. You got to live by your values. Anyways, what tends to happen is that the subconscious has different levels. If we've been butthurt one too many times, or we've been raised in a very I'm not bashing atheism here, but the way it tends to manifest these days, I think it really needs to be tweaked. If we're raised in a very atheistic or a difficult family or environment, we can tend to regress to the mean, which is the animalistic side of the subconscious. It will develop an existential point of view that's very nihilistic, or deterministic, hedonistic, animalistic. It will build up more of a sense of I need to be in fight or flight all the time. I need to be ready for shit to go down. So we see this in like there's a term that people use is analysis paralysis. I mean, the anxiety and depression are just horrifying these days. Sociopathy and psychopathy are much more common than people would like to believe, but these tend to originate from a chronic addiction to stress. The cells in our bodies will feed on what we produce. So if we create a lot of cortisol, and that's what our cells become addicted, and adapted to, then that's what we're going to want all the time, even without realizing it. We can even convince ourselves that we're not addicted to stress because that increases the stress. Anyways, I'll get into that another time. But what I'm getting down to is your nervous system can get stuck in a state that is reactive. Naturally, we should be able to flow in and out of this state and probably be more in what's called rest and digest, more of a calm and healing state of nervous state. But more and more people, and well, it's hard to know historically what things were like before and things are now, but the stressors that we get in modern day life and with the family unit generally falling apart, family values, natural values falling apart, and I'm not saying that the opposite is completely wrong. I think both sides have value, but we tend to be rejecting the what I was saying, the natural values a lot. It seems like more people are high-strung, and ultimately what that creates is a perspective of the world is a cold, dead place. I am going to die one day, and so I better indulge while I'm still here. It creates, as you would imagine, a very animalistic point of view, survivalist, and the scariest part is it tends to get covered up in a very civil outer impression, like a sociopath, for example, is a great extreme example of this. They appear very agreeable or charming or so on and so on, but underneath it, that's something that they're using to fuck you over and suck you dry, or get what they want indirectly or directly. So it comes also, like, let's just say when Nietzsche said God is dead, with the advent of science and everyone just saying, oh, that means God doesn't exist, or there's no spiritual truth, that was premature. We tend to fall back into this animalistic state because it's more obvious, right? The world can be very difficult, and it's also easier to think that way because it requires less responsibility. You can just fall back and be very hedonistic, indulge until you die. But and also, like, make no connection with other people, bring no real value, because that's hard. Bringing value is hard. Anyways. I think I'm creating a decent picture here, but yeah, as Nietzsche said, when he said God was dead, he also predicted what was going to come next. Societies trying to come together through an atheistic morality, and that didn't work out so good. And we're still recovering from this death of God thing. And I'm not saying that I believe in God or anything. It's just you can see it in even our scientific assumptions, most of which have been disproven a while ago, but that we, as a culture, we still assume to be the main truths, such as we live in a cold, dead universe made of cold, dead matter. It doesn't give a shit about you. You gotta fight to survive, all this kind of thing. And that is part of the truth. Again and again, I'm going to say this, I'm not denying that. But when we only see things that way, we tend to, in practical terms, society tends to fall apart little by little, and it creates more sociopaths. It allows for more sociopaths to feed on the weak, or I'd say the less aware, or even the more aware. Anyways, and I'm trying to get back to the first point I was trying to make, is that this is a subconscious framework that colors every action that we take, what we believe that we should be spending our time doing. If you become conscious of this, then you can start dissecting it and pulling it apart. And I'm going to start through my videos looking at the main assumptions that create these perspectives that tend to end up in destructive cultures, and giving arguments against them. For example, this idea that we're a mistake that came about in reality, like that we're just a bunch of amino acids floating in water, getting zapped by lightning. That's been disproven for the most part. It's actually, when we're talking about proving or disproving things, it gets very complicated, but we now know that that is incredibly unlikely, and we are back to the beginning, not really understanding how life could have come to be. Nick Lane, one of the head researchers in this field, said the chances of throwing a bunch of amino acids into charged water and it turning into life are the same odds as throwing a bunch of car parts into a pool and expecting a Lambo to come out of it. It doesn't work. We've tried it in the lab. And anyways, from fossil records and every means of deduction that we have so far, it looks like the Earth was never in the state that we originally thought that would require when life came to be. So ultimately we don't know, but it turns out the evidence points against that. So I'm getting at the idea that, hey, maybe life is not a mistake. Not to say that we have some great purpose or something like that, but just that point. I've said this to some people, and I've gotten either such intense emotional reactions, such hate, such they jump on like, oh, you're talking about religion, and religion is destructive, and blah blah. They just jump right into it, or people are just kind of like, some people already know this shit, obviously, but some people are like, holy shit, that kind of makes sense, because I mean, look at the universe. It's in perfect balance all the time. Mathematically, it is perfect. How could we be a mistake? Again, it's possible, but as far as I can tell, all the evidence goes against it. We're part of the universe. We're part of this perfect universe in some strange way, and our pain and our suffering might very well be a part of that perfection. Ultimately, I don't know, but I feel the need to fight against this subconscious, almost parasite, this belief structure meme that underlies our culture, because I have spent a long time looking at it, studying it, and seeing that it leads again and again to destruction and a lot more pain than is necessary. And the alternative, meaning some respect for life, a sense that it's worth striving to improve the world and go through the hardship that's required to do that, not giving up, feeling a connection to life. That's another thing about this extreme atheistic perspective, is that it makes us not be able to relate to life. It makes the universe seem very inhuman. And connection is what we crave for the most. It's necessary for us to properly understand what's going on around us. It's required to connect to other people. It's required for people in groups to connect to each other, and also for us to connect to the universe. And I'll explain one day at some point what I mean by that. You can say, yes, connect to the universe. It sounds very esoteric, but there is a very real aspect to it too. Very scientific and grounded aspect to this. And that perspective pays off for people. It gives them a fucking life that is worth living and dying for, and helping other people. And I just see good coming out of it. The more I live by it, the better my life keeps becoming. I'm so confident in this now, because I'm on a steady rise. I have been on a steady rise for years now, living this way. And the more I do it, the more I see my other people around me sync up, and the more I connect to amazing people everywhere. And it's slow and it's difficult, and I'm not saying it's all fucking sunshine coming out of your asshole shit, like rainbows and unicorns, but I wouldn't even want it that way. This is more fun. It's scarier, it's more challenging, it's more exciting. right? I'm going to end up becoming a motivational speaker, I guess. Fuck. I think I've said what I need to say about that specifically. Just have some fucking hope and a little sense of humor about yourself. Question these beliefs. It's not all bleak, and I'm really sorry if you've come to that perspective because you've had a very difficult life. But sooner or later, I can't keep having compassion about that because people almost get addicted to it. It's an easy way of life, right? To have no responsibility, to not feel any need to help. And I've had a fucking difficult life in so many ways. That's another point. I'm going to have a whole video on this. Is like, you can't tell me how hard my life is, and I can't tell you how hard your life is. I'll just say this: I've spent literally almost 2 decades in intense chronic pain, constant chronic pain, incapable of really getting support, feeling completely lost. And luckily, I still had a sense. Somewhere along the line, I got just this sense that I needed to keep working against it, or kill myself. And I understood that I didn't know if things could change or not, and so that left a little sparkle of hope. And it was worth putting in the work, and I just kept learning and trying things, and things have improved enormously. And I really hope that if you're in a terrible place, that you can do the same. And I've met some people who've had it really, really, really hard. I'm so sorry. But sooner or later you have to fucking sit up and face it. Face the truth. And start questioning your beliefs, because just because your life has been shit doesn't mean that life is shit. That's just you. Thanks for watching.